Come with me to my next chess tournament. If you look at the chess results participation list, you will never be able to guess which country I'm going to. It is literally such a diverse tournament. There are people from every continent, every country you can imagine. It's insane. And that with only 60 participants in the tournament. It's currently 1 a.m., so I'm on my way to the airport. My flight is at 6:40 a.m., but there's no public transport here from 1 a.m. to like 4:40 a.m. So I'm gonna get to the airport at about 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. and then I'm gonna stay at the airport, wait 5 hours for my flight, and go to mystery country numero 4. A clue about the next country we're going to: it's sunny, it's very sunny over there, and I'm very excited. Since it's been a few weeks, here's a small recap of what happened last time in the Amsterdam Chess Open in the Netherlands. We did a pretty good tournament and we gained like 30 points FIDE, totaling us to 80 points FIDE on the month of November since we had a good German tournament. Now our new rating is 1956 FIDE. I'm about to take the fast train here, which is called the Sprinter. These trains have insane comfortable seats. You're gonna see, it's amazing. Hey everyone, welcome back to another recap of another tournament, again in Portugal. So after we got to the tournament place, I straight went to my hotel to settle down and then prepare. And then I saw I was against a Grandmaster who's almost 2,500. So I prepared for the next hour and 45 minutes up until the round at 8 p.m. And it was 8 p.m. on my clock. I get out of my room, so I'm on my way to walk to the venue. And I walk, and then suddenly I don't recognize the surrounding buildings. You see, my hotel is like 7 minutes away from the playing hall, and I am in a city in which there are really winding roads all over the place, and it's like very small, and it's all winding roads, so it's very easy to get lost. And sure enough, after 2 minutes, I didn't know at all where I was. Well, now it's like 8:07, I'm 7 minutes late. I run back to my hotel room, check the Google Maps on my phone. I still have to leave my phone there, get out, find the venue 7 minutes late, which for the first round is big because they take time to do announcements and stuff. My clock says 1 hour and 23 minutes. That's basically how I played my first GM ever. This time around is gonna be a little different. After every single game, I'm gonna put down some lessons for you to note down that we learned from that very game, so you get more value out of the video, and actually I get more value out of just making some life lessons for myself at the end. So I have the black pieces against a Grandmaster from Israel who's 2486. My opponent is known for playing e4. Not known, but they play e4 more than anything else. And he goes d4. So I prepared for the ounce of 1 hour and a half that I had, all on e4. I prepared a very long line. d4 happened. I also had something prepped against d4. So I go d5, c4, and then e6. Typical for me, I go with the semi-Slav, which is e6, c6, and then my opponent goes with g3, telling me that they're going for Catalan setups. The Catalan is an opening for white with very, very nice perks, and the idea is to settle here, play bishop g2, knight d2, queen c2, and then play e4, and pierce at the center. And so here I go for bishop d6, which is not novel. Yeah, it's novel for me, but the novel idea for me here is I go with f5. And here, the black pieces acquire somewhat of a stone wall structure. The white pieces usually have this stone wall structure like this, right? With the e3 pawn there and the f4 pawn here. This pawn is not pushed, it's on g3. it's on g2. So my idea with this is to prevent white from going e4 in later dates of this opening and really playing against the idea of the Catalan. So he goes bishop g2, and then I go with knight f6, common development, b3, knight bd7. I'm not losing after 7 moves against a Grandmaster. Pretty good, pretty good, pretty good. Bishop b2, and then I go castles and castles. And here, I have the black pieces, so I'm gonna switch it up. We're not looking at this from my opponent's point of view. I need to find a plan here, right? Mostly, the biggest concern is this bishop on c8. It's not that good of a bishop. And so how do I get this bishop out? How do I develop it? Well, I could do it with b6, bishop b7, and then c5. There's also b5 things. So I can do rook b8 first, getting my rook out of the x-ray of this bishop, and then going for b5. But I thought, if I play rook b8, it's way too obvious. I won't do that. And so I opted for a5 instead. a5 aims for a4, and also a4, a3 maybe, to go about this bishop. And now my opponent plays what I would quantify as a positional masterpiece. This is a move that you see Grandmasters play when they have very high positional understanding, and that move is a4. He blocks my idea, but not only that, he makes clear his idea. He wants my tremendously good bishop off the board. That's, you know, hinting at both sides of the board, is the key to all the dark squares in my position. Why? Because I have pawns only on light squares, and this bishop's legit mission is to take up all the dark squares. So what's the idea of a4 then? White wants to go bishop a3, now defended by the rook here, to trade off my bishop, and also it would pin my bishop to my rook. All to gain the dark squares in my position. Really deep, right? So I go with knight e4, completely ignoring bishop a3. Bishop a3 not now. It just doesn't make sense. I have takes, maybe queen e7. I don't think my opponent would play this. And another theme that happened also in this game is that my opponent was extremely patient. You see this in GMs, that they don't rush a plan. They take their time. They go with it. Thanks for the lighting. Queen c2 was played here, and then I go with queen e7. Now I'm blocking this bishop a3 move, and yeah, I kind of want to go with b6 things, but my opponent goes with e3 here. There's always plans with knight takes. F takes is what I had seen, and then you can go knight here. But I always like things like takes and bishop c5, and overall, black is at least equal in this position, or so I thought. And initially, you can also go like knight e5, but you know, I just thought of takes, bishop c5 as well, and didn't love it for white. So now after e3, I go b6. The idea is I finally get to develop my bishop, and I want to go to a6, and I want to maybe open up the c file on this queen. If you take, and I take, and queen a6 to attack my rook, I had rook a7 with like, okay, at least I'm clear. But even after I played b6, I saw something even better. After takes queen here, the white pieces lose to bishop a6. And here I'm attacking the rook and threatening to trap the queen with rook a8. My opponent goes with knight e5, and now we have both knights here, e4, e5. It's a fully loaded game. My opponent's attacking c6, to which I take. I could also defend, but this is very passive. I don't want my bishop to be constrained to the defense of a pawn that's defending a pawn. It's a misuse of this bishop. So instead I take, and after takes back, I go bishop c5. Now this bishop c5 move, because of e3 by my opponent, is now looking at a stone wall. My bishop is looking at a wall, the Berlin Wall, if you will, and cannot pass through. Knight f3 was played here. Again, taking things, I really like the black pieces. I feel like the white pieces as bishops are not that good. Yeah, I'm one to talk with my bishop on c8, but there's always improvement, and overall, I think I would have good play on this f-file. It's not too advisable, not at least now. So knight f3 is what I had seen as well, to go knight d4 or even bishop d4. The cementation of this d4 square is really nice for the white pieces because it aims at my two weaknesses, c6 and e6. So I have to respond to this with bishop a6, and in view of knight d4, which was played, now I have rook c8. Eventual b5, things are powerful because I'm attacking c4, and if you take, well, you do me a favor by opening up the c file. So I like those things. Rook fd1 was played, and then I go rook fd8, rook ac1 is being played, and now I go bishop b4. Very critical moment. Here I'm finally threatening b4. This bishop c5 move is pretty much my best move of the game. The move that I play with the most ideas, the most creativity, and the most options. My opponent for a long time have had f3. It's never been that good for me because I go to g5, my knight's not trapped, but let's say after h4, my knight is less than good. Here I actually like this for black, so maybe just don't even touch my knight, and this knight is very, very uneasy, right? Now with this bishop b4 move, I'm kind of opening up this c5 square for myself. That's very important because my knight is very good on c5. It even attacks b3 a little bit, so I like to see that. f3 was played, and then I go knight c5, and then bishop f1. By the way, let's say on a random move here, I was threatening, again, masterclass bishop b4, b5 here. So nice. If takes, I have takes, and I'm probably winning a pawn. It's really, really strong. And I'm threatening this pawn, so white are pretty much in trouble here. I think kicking my knight so that I conceal my own file for myself is very, very nice for the white pieces because it takes out a lot of the counterplay I had against them. Bishop f1. Beautiful move. This not only blocks the b5 idea, but really threatens this. Pawn takes and opening up the diagonal on my bishop here. I don't like taking because on bishop takes, this looks medium. I mean, white gains a lot of advances and the pawn on e6 is just more and more attacked. I don't love this. And now the idea of bishop b7 is that if you take and I take, you can't go knight b5 immediately because I have discoveries on your queen, which are very strong, of course. So now my opponent plays another prophylactic move, queen f2, to get out of this x-ray. I'm telling you, the x-rays are real in chess. The files open up, the diagonals open up, and if you have a weak piece on that file or the diagonal, it's gonna be en prise. So queen f2 is played. And now I go knight d7. My aim is this e5 pawn, which is under defended. And if I can get f4, then I can get this square back, and the maneuver is completed with knight c5, knight e4. Of course, I didn't expect this, but it does force the opening of the file, and then knight b5. I didn't love anything else than knight d7, and knight d7 is the best move, so you love to see it. Although, this knight is on a very weak square, and it's a very strong knight, taking up a lot of these vital, very nice little squares in my position. I don't like this. I'm not comfortable with this knight there, although it's completely equal here. So now I go for rook c5. In my opinion, this is a mistake. Of course, this is my idea, as if a gem would just do that. And of course, this is my idea as well. I don't want to go rook c6 and then doubling on this c file because then there's like knight a7 things. I'm scared of that, right? So rook c5 just gives bishop d4 is what's annoying. And my rook is attacked. I'm taking the rook, rook takes, and now I go with knight c5, attacking this pawn, and now queen c2. If I go like rook c8, I don't love knight d6 things. So my knight is kind of blocking my bishop to defend. This bishop is kind of out of play. I mean, the diagonals it takes up are not amazing. And overall, my opponent is playing very well against my minor pieces when you look at it point blank. From their perspective, their minor pieces are doing very well on this board. The knight is on a key square, can't be attacked. Outpost knight, you could even say. This bishop is on a main square in the center, tidying up all these pawns. So bishop c6, knight d6, I expected this, and then bishop e8. I'm uncomfortable in my position. It's the first times in the game that I'm genuinely uncomfortable because I have no plan. What do I do here with the black pieces? So I try to reincorporate my bishop into the game. Bishop g6, bishop h5, just getting my bishop on one of the two non-closed diagonals that remain on this light square board. And bishop c3, my opponent played, is an amazing move. My bishop is a super strong bishop. I don't know if you remember at the beginning of this game, but the bishop on d6 was the crux of my position. It defended all the dark squares. And now we move on to this moment in the game where my opponent has taken up all of those dark squares and are now trading off my bishop. So bishop c3, and now I lose the bishop pair, they do too, and I go bishop h5. Bishop h5 is kind of like a sore little non-threat, and for real, it's not that losing here. I can just play very, very chill h6, be okay, and not go about these things. But my bishop leaving this diagonal here is off of a4, and after bishop h5 and king f2, and let's say g5 is what I play, to just create some counterplay, a little bit too little too late, it's like not really good counterplay, but what do I do on this queen side? Like not much, right? The point of this bishop leaving this diagonal is really not good, because after b4, which is enabled now, my knight can't take on a4 because now it's trapped, right? But with the bishop still here, my knight would have been defended very well and I would have been fine. So it would have blocked this b4 idea, which ultimately is a way into my position. With b4 now on the board, takes, it's really hard to defend this while holding this position. Here, I didn't even think of queen a7. I didn't even think of queen c7. Queen c7 is the best move in this position, which is odd to me. You're defending this pawn, but you're auto pinning your knight to your queen. It is threatening knight d3 check, which I saw afterwards, right? And you're threatening the rook. But then after king g1, what do you do here? So I didn't play this. Instead, I played the passive move knight d7, which I knew gave rook c7, and now white is better. The idea is that I have queen f8, and I'm attacking this. And again, if you play f4, I'm kind of liking these things. But what I let in this position is this rook on the 7th rank, which is really, really bad. You don't want to do that. And I let it in thinking that I still had some chances, but my psychology was kind of broken since that rook c5 move ways back that just let bishop d4. I don't know. I was really fragile psychologically in this game, and I don't know why. But I think as far along as we went into the game, more and more moves were played that I felt like I was just getting outplayed, and here I give up a little bit with that knight d7. So rook c7 pins my knight to my queen, so I can't take, but then queen f8 threatens the e5 pawn a little bit more. And now f4 is good, because knight c5 things are kind of a joke. Takes, and my counterplay is very minimal here, you know? The e6 pawn will always hang, and that would be overall very losing. So now I go knight f6. The idea is on takes, I take here, and I give up a pawn for counterplay because I have 3 pawns here. But this is completely over. My opponent finds a really good move, rook g7 check, king here, and then rook e8. Attacking my pawn, I go d4, trying for a pawn break. After takes, I saw that takes bishop here, and I didn't love it. So I just went for d4 instead, and now bishop e2, trying to trade bishops. If I trade here, it's mate. So I went to the only square I can where I can still take up the e8 square, and then h4, threatening h5, bullying my bishop. h5 only move, trying to break up these pawns if you take, and that would be actually quite okay. But no, there's rook g7 here, and after the forced bishop e8, there's a very nice move for the white pieces, which of course I had seen it, and I knew I was losing by now, but I just wanted it to be played on the board for the sake of the beauty. And that's f7, sacrificing a rook while attacking my bishop. And after the last try, e3 check on the board. The idea is that if you take here, I have check, and although it's still losing, at least with that check, I defend my bishop, and play would go on. But no, after e3, he's a GM, just king e1 here, and I resigned. I just came back from the park. Here is a summary of the lessons learned from this game. Right here, after I trade, in this position is the first time I have an edge in this game ever in the game, probably. And this stems from me having relatively two options, bishop c5 or bishop b4. And I didn't like bishop b4 things because it gives knight f3, and against this I just thought the knight would go here, and it's way too strong. I should have a bishop on c5 to take up the d4 square. When looking at bishop c5, I thought, okay, the knight going here is not as bad because my bishop is taking up d4. And this is the mistake. When deciding between two equally seeming good options and or bad options, calculate both to the ends of the world. Then you have to evaluate the final position in which you calculated each one, and then you have to weigh them and see which one you like best. I failed at doing that here. Between these two options, I was extremely lazy. I just looked at this, and I had a bias against bishop b4 because of knight f3 and stopped calculating here. Actually, black retained their edge after knight f3 when I play c5 and or d takes. If the queen takes, I have bishop a6, and this wins the exchange on f1. And if b takes, these two pawns are isolated, and black finds himself in a small advantage after bishop b7 with rook a d8, and overall white have extreme weaknesses on a4 and c4. Nothing related to knight d4, I just wasn't rooting for myself in that variation, and that's a big mistake. Lesson number 2. If you're ever scared of a variation whilst calculating it, get rid of that fear by calculating through it even more. So let's say in this position, I was very scared of taking here and even said it during the analysis, this doesn't look good for the black pieces after takes, and bishop takes, and queen takes, and this adds pieces on e6. Truth is, if I calculate through the fear and try to find a solution to the minor problem on e6, and instead come up with rook d5, here black has a slight edge as well. Planning to double rooks, and this rook is very stable on d5, cannot be kicked very easily, and no e4 is present. Here, black is doing actually pretty good. Not rook d8 immediately because c6 falls, obviously, but you get the point. I'm gonna double rooks, and I'm gonna colonize on that d file. Lesson number 3. My first mistake of the game, outright mistake, is bishop h5. It's such a careless move because after white defends, well, they didn't have to play it, b4 immediately is that good. Sacking the pawn on f3. My opponent didn't play this, but this is a spectacular move. The point is, know what your opponent plans to do to better prophylactically play against them. So here, I know, and I knew the entire game that b4, not the entire game, but from here on out, it's clear. b4 is what white wants to play to open up the queen side and go on this weak b6 pawn. Knowing this, there's a way to prevent it by stemming some a4 pressure with the knight and bishop. That's why I should have kept my knight and bishop on the a4 pawn and not have gone for careless bishop h5, so that now b4 is very strong, and basically I just make a weakness for myself. So lesson number 4. Know your opponent's counterplay. Find a solution against their counterplay by looking at more than one possible move. These are called candidate moves in chess. And in this position, I only looked, okay, I have 3 minutes on the clock, but still, I only look at knight d7, which I know is losing, whereas queen c7 still holds for black. I didn't look at this candidate move, I didn't look at this candidate move, and I deserve to be punished because I only looked for one solution to a problem, never looked for one possible solution. Look for multiple solutions, calculate, evaluate, and weigh them. Here, queen c7 is not bad, threatening this, as we saw in the game, forcing a king move early, and then we can stop a5 here, which would play on the fact that this is all weak with rook a8, and this holds. It doesn't win, it holds. On the opposite side, this loses. Those are all the lessons I have for you today. I hope that little segment at the end was nice. Thank you so much for watching, and have an amazing day.